Live. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Communist Party's special presentation this evening, an eyewitness account of developments in Venezuela. And we're very happy to have Maicol Lynch, who is a member of our party. He is a graduate student and professor at Ohio University in Athens. And he represented us and the communist youth of our party at a meeting of the World Federation of Democratic Youth in Caracas just a few weeks ago. My name is Joe Sims, and again, welcome. Without further ado, I want to turn the floor over to Maicol. Maicol, you'll speak for what, about 20 minutes, and then we'll have a question and answer period?
Yes.
All right, we'll take it away. And welcome again, everybody, to this special presentation on Update Eyewitness on Venezuela. And Maicol, we are streaming on Facebook Live. Go ahead.
Well, hello, everyone watching, including comrades here in the United States and abroad. I just got off the phone with some of our comrades in Venezuela. They said that they're watching as well. So hello to you. So the first thing I wanted to say was 14 days, 2 weeks is not enough time to get to know a complete country, right? Not like the people who live there and grow up there, are educated within the school system, spend their lives in the political movements there, the student movements, et cetera, et cetera. But I did get, I would say, a little bit of a taste of the Bolivarian Revolution and kind of the developments that the United Socialist Party of Venezuela and all the reforms that they've made within the past. It's been 21 years now since Chavez came to power in 1998. And also the perspective of our fraternal party, which is the Communist Party of Venezuela and their youth branch. So I was sent, as Joe Sims was saying, as a youth delegate to the World Federation of Democratic Youth. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically a it's a meeting, it's a seminar, right? A yearly seminar of youth, communist and socialist and other leftist anti-imperialist parties that were formed pretty much under the leadership of the Soviet Union after the Second World War, with the intent of kind of establishing this dialogue between all of the leftist anti-imperialist youth organizations in the world during the aftermath of World War II, during the Cold War, right? And so this was the General Council meeting. Not all of the organizations of WFDY, as we call it, WFDY were there in representation, but the ones that are on the General Council, including our youth movement, was there present. And there's a picture of them, a few of us. Some of the youth groups that were there include both the youth of the socialist and communist parties of Venezuela, Cuban Party, North Korean worker youth, El Salvador, Chile, Argentina. It was a great representation of regions from around the world, which is great. I was also there it was the first part of the week. And then the second part of the week, which was like April 11th onward to like the 15th, was the second solidarity mission in Caracas, Venezuela. And that's kind of where they take us delegates around and they show us what they're doing in the country, how they're helping people with different reforms, such as housing, education, et cetera, et cetera. And we stand in solidarity with them and, make videos and such, which many of you have seen on my Facebook page. And so it was a really educational experience overall. I remember the first couple days, as you can see in the picture here with the other youth members. This was in the Hotel Alba, it's located in the center of Caracas, which is the capital. The first day I arrived, which was Friday, it was a Friday, a few days before the General Council of WFDY began to meet. And I woke up the next morning and there were some government officials downstairs and I'm saying, oh, I want to go out and take a walk. And they're like, okay, yeah, go out. Like they encouraged us to go out and be by ourselves because it is very safe. And they asked us, is there anywhere you want to go in particular, and et cetera, et cetera. And so it was really awesome to go around I went with a Peruvian comrade and we walked around the city by ourselves the first few days and got to know everything. And it was really, we were almost disappointed because I guess we were looking for something more exciting in terms of like a riot or a protest, and we really didn't see anything. In fact, we joked and we said the most violent thing we saw the whole time we were there was an evangelical lady on the corner telling homosexuals that they're going to go to hell. And that's the worst thing that we saw the whole time we were there. But I do want to talk a little bit about the crisis because, as you know, I'm going to talk about the reforms that have been made under the Bolivarian Revolution since 1998. But it would be, undermining the situation if we didn't talk about the crisis, because there is an economic crisis, and it's definitely more economic than political from what I saw, right? And so if we go back to 1998, when Hugo Chavez, who was a young boy from the barrios, from the hood, right, of Caracas, growing up. He, collected candy and sold candy, growing up, and he joined the military and rose through the ranks of the military and assumed power in 1998 and announced to the world, not just to Venezuela, but to the world, that he was going to start a revolution. And this wasn't a Marxist revolution, and it still isn't a Marxist revolution today. In fact, when he was asked if he was a Marxist, such as Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, he said, "I'm not a Marxist, but I'm not an anti-Marxist." And even today, we need to understand that the Bolivarian Revolution is exactly that. It's not a Marxist revolution, but it is a social democratic revolution. And they don't use the term social democracy. They call it Chavismo because it was made, implemented by Chavez. And it's very obvious that the people still love him. They miss him very much. We were taken to his tomb, and everywhere we went, they showed how many times he was there, the things that he did, the people he spoke to, et cetera, et cetera. But how do they justify the revolution there? Well, it's called the Bolivarian Revolution because of Simón Bolívar, right? And I can move the slide. Simón Bolívar was a hero of not just Venezuela. He was born in Venezuela, but he actually was born in Caracas and liberated 5 countries in South America. So Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, and Panama, which Panama was part of Colombia until actually quite recently. But in the 1820s, he, was known as the liberator, and he founded this country called the Gran Colombia, which incorporated part of Venezuela. And he called this, a republic for all people, not just, white people, as had happened in the United States in the 13 colonies, but a republic for all people. His parents had died. He had been raised by Black slaves for a while, right? And so he liberated this country for everyone. And in the picture there on the left, you see that's actually Hugo Chavez's tomb. And you see a picture right behind him of Simón Bolívar. So that's where the term Bolivarian Revolution comes from. And then next to the picture with the 4 guards dressed in red, that is where Simón Bolívar's tomb is. That's his tomb and his sword that's in that case that you see there. So you have the aspects of Bolívar, but then you also have the aspects of Christian charity. Hugo Chavez and even the current president, Nicolas Maduro, and the majority of people that I spoke to there in the United Socialist Party all claim to be practicing Catholics. And that's how they justify socialism, taking care of the people as any Christian would do. And then as you see in the mural that I'm standing in front of, you see Hugo Chavez's face next to Nicolas Maduro. And you see a quote by Hugo Chavez that he made in December of 2012. When he was dying of cancer. He died the next year in 2013. And it said, please, elect Nicolas Maduro as the next president. He's a poor working class guy just like me. He's a bus driver, and he's gonna be the best person to elect to continue the revolution, right? And it would be, we understand that the crisis that's going on now, and all the people that I interviewed, including the people that don't necessarily like Maduro as a person, they all told me, we are an oil-rich country, and they've done great things with the oil, right? But there's definitely been mismanagement of it. And we'll get into that here as the presentation goes on. So the United Socialist Party was actually created out of the movement of socialism that Hugo Chavez started in 1998. It's a party that was a bunch of different socialist organizations that came together in 2007, so about 12 years ago. And they have well over 30 political parties or organizations that participate in electoral politics. And you have at least 9 parties that you can see in this picture to the left that are allied and form kind of a coalition with the ruling PSUV, or the PSUV, which is the the United Socialist Party of Venezuela. You have our fraternal party, which is the PCV with the red rooster, as you can see there, that's the Communist Party of Venezuela. You have the blue one, PPT, which is like a libertarian Marxist party. You have Podemos, which means we can or we are able to, and that's kind of like the Social Democratic Party. And these were all present when we were taken on the second solidarity mission to see Maduro give a speech. They were all present in the audience, representatives from their youth branches, from their parties, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but I was reminded by members of our fraternal party that even though they are in coalition in a political alliance with Maduro's party, with Chavez's old party, it's important to know that the Communist Party of Venezuela does not necessarily have power. They have representation in this coalition that's called the Great Patriotic Pole, but they don't necessarily have power. So are there workers in power? Not necessarily, because the only thing that's been nationalized by the Bolivarian government since Chavez took power in 1988 is the oil, for the most part. So we were taken to see Nicolas Maduro. This is a picture of our audience with him that was taken there. It was interesting, the quote that I pulled out of his entire speech was, "It needs to be a Christian in 21st century socialism," meaning that he's not on the path to establishing kind of a socialist state that we associate with Cuba or the old Sandinistas in the 1980s, Soviet Union, et cetera, et cetera. But when I was on the plane ride going to Venezuela, I was with a lot of Venezuelans who live here in the United States. They were coming from Mexico, Panama, et cetera, et cetera. And I interviewed some of them and I said, are you in favor of socialism? And from the 3 that I interviewed on the plane going into Caracas, they all said, of course we're in favor of socialism. We don't like Nicolas Maduro as a person. We think he's kind of inept. We don't think he's a good leader. But we know that's one person. We're for the movement. And so if I go back to the slide I had here, the question that they're asking, and I found this on Facebook actually, it said, are you discontent with the government, but you're in support of the process, meaning the process to socialism? Vote for one of the allied parties. Right. And so that's what I noticed a lot of people are aligning to. People aren't necessarily voting for Chavez's party, right, or Nicolas Maduro's party, but they're voting for one of the allied parties because they still believe in these reforms that have been made under Chavez and Maduro and the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, but they want to continue. They want to go even further than that. And one of the women, whose name was Rosario, who I interviewed on the plane ride from Panama to Caracas, she told me, I want a socialism like they have in Cuba. And me being the devil's advocate, I said, but I heard it's not 100% easy there either. They have the embargo. She said, no. They know what they're doing. We want socialism like there. And this is a woman who, she was actually living in Mexico. She's a Venezuelan who's been living in Mexico for the past few years because of the economic crisis and because wages are low. But even then, the people, the Venezuelan government's doing their best to take care of the people in terms of free gasoline, free education, free food, et cetera, et cetera. So what is the solution to the economic crisis? Well, you have the socialists on one side, right? Maduro's, the Chavistas, as we call them. And they seem to tell me from the ones I've interviewed, we'll just kind of do something with the oil and we'll follow the example of Evo Morales, right? Bolivia, which is the close ally of Maduro and Venezuela. Because Evo Morales, indigenous president of Bolivia, he considers himself to be a socialist of the 21st century, exactly like Chavez. And they are, according to both the World Bank and the United Nations, most recently in the reports that I've read, they are the fastest growing economy in the region. I don't know if that means Latin America or South America, but they've recently made great advances in healthcare, in the economy, et cetera, et cetera. So they could somehow use their oil economy and model it after that. May be hard because it's very different circumstances, but maybe that's something. The Communist Party of Venezuela, which is our allied party, our fraternal party, we actually got an audience with their national committee, their Politburo, and they were basically telling us, this needs to be a revolutionary exit out of this crisis. It can't just be, we're sitting around waiting for something to go, because nothing's going to happen if we just sit around and claim to fight imperialism, which they're doing. And that's why people stand behind Maduro, even if they don't like him. He's an anti-imperialist, right? But the Communist Party of Venezuela say, we have to implement Marxism, Leninism. We have to diversify the economy. We have the land for agriculture. We have gold. We have the petroleum. Let's use it. Let's stop the mismanagement and whatever's going on, and let's let the workers seize the means of production. Let's put workers in power, right? Because that's something that hasn't been eliminated completely, is capitalism. That, you know, the crisis that's being caused in Venezuela is partially due to imperialism, US imperialism, of course, but it's still a capitalist country. They still have state capitalism, but they've implemented great social democratic reforms that have benefited the people, and it would be, you know, not fair to not talk about these reforms. So, and if you look at this picture to the right, it says, "Aquí no se habla mal de Chávez." That actually means here we don't talk bad about Chávez. So it's interesting. You see that everywhere. It's a popular hashtag. First time I saw it was getting off the plane going into the airport. One of the most popular reforms that people were talking about when I was there was what I know from studying Brazil. It's called in Brazil under Lula, it was called Bolsa Familia. And what it meant was when you have student in school, right, you get a book bag, each student gets a book bag full of school supplies and textbooks, and then they get a tablet. And this is true for Venezuela as well, at the elementary school, primary school level, and also at the university. So they gave us a book bag to all the different delegates that attended the Second Solidarity Mission. They gave us a book bag and a tablet. My tablet was taken, it was confiscated going through Panama on the way back, but I did get everything. I kept everything in the book bag. Another thing is free education. On top of that, on top of getting these supplies, medicine. You know, we hear these lies that, you know, people are dying in hospitals, et cetera, but there's generators. I mean, the power went out when I was there, not for 2 days, but for 2 hours, and it went out in 94% of the country. Luckily, no one was trapped in the elevator for too long. That was good. But we did have to walk down flights of stairs in the hotel we were staying at. But Cuban doctors are present, like in many parts of Latin America, supervising at the hospitals and such. I met a lot of medical students while I was there. In fact, a few of them are watching right now, and they're in the youth of the Communist Party of Venezuela. And also free gasoline. I remember I was one of the first few days I was riding with someone in the car, and we stopped for gasoline. And it's a service station. They fill it up for you, and we drove off. And I thought, oh my gosh, we don't pay for gas here. And they said, how are we going to pay for gas in an oil-rich country? You know, so that was, enlightening to me coming from the United States. Another thing we visited was the the Bolivarian Military Academy. And before I got there, this was later on in the visit. This was probably the 6th or 7th day I was there. I thought, oh, how cool. This is, not a police state. Every time I went out on my own for walking or, going to another part of the country, on some sort of visit, we never saw police and military people in the streets, as we're told, oh, it's a police state and they're shooting people down and et cetera, et cetera. In fact, I was looking for something like that. I thought, I was looking for a riot or a rally or something. I didn't see any of that. But when we visited the military academy, it was a warm welcome. There was no formal salutes or, people standing up straight. It was all hugs and kisses and smiles and let's take pictures, let's take selfies. Oh, you're an American communist, how cool. And so it was a really welcoming environment. It really showed me that this isn't a police state, and this is an army of defense and not aggression. And these people, even the ones that aren't in the military, they're ready to defend the country if need be. Probably one of my favorite parts of the visit was the recreational centers that they have. We visited a recreational center in Caracas, which is, I understood it was the biggest in the country, but they have about 5 or 6 of these in every big city around the country, and then a few, 1 or 2 in like the smaller towns. But the one that we visited was 5 floors. It has gyms on a few floors. On the roof, they had a basketball stadium, they had a library, a computer lab, and a cafeteria where they provide free meals for people in the community that come and stop in. And this is all free. It was really interesting. And I remember asking someone, oh, this would be great for when the power goes out. The power has been going out in the past few months. And they said, yes, exactly. This is where everyone congregates when the power goes out, because here we have food, here we have computers, here we have games, et cetera, et cetera. And what affected me most profoundly was in the gym, a lot of the exercise equipment was facing a transparent breastfeeding room where women can go in and breastfeed or pump, et cetera, but you can see through it. It's a glass window. And I asked someone, why do they have it here on the same floor as the gym, just out of curiosity? And they said it's to eliminate machismo, misogyny. So these families, men and women, children, can be together and feel comfortable in the same environment, understand it's okay to see a woman breastfeeding while you're exercising. That's life, that's the way it works, it's natural. And then here in the picture you see there's a representative of the government speaking to us, and in the other picture, it's me at the recreational center where they have a radio station, and anyone can go in there, talk in favor or against the government about anything they want, give advice about relationships, whatever, and it's open to the public to speak on the radio. And these were all students and members of the different communist parties in Latin America. Now, this is my favorite part. This is the coolest part of the trip, was the military bases that are now housing complexes. We arrived to, they didn't tell us where we were going. They just told us we were going to go see some of the reforms. And we arrived, and I remember telling one of the comrades, "Oh, I feel like I'm on a landing strip at an airport." And he said, "Well, you are actually. It used to be a military base. It used to be an Air Force base. Tiuna is what it's called, Tiuna City. And they have transformed this military base into a housing complex. And the numbers they've built 9,000 homes and counting, right? And the goal as of last July is to have more than 15,000 houses to be constructed in the years to come. Now, this has been done in part with money from the oil economy, but also from the help of the Chinese government that's come in. In fact, the nickname for Tiuna City, where these houses are located, it's actually Los Chinos, the Chinese, right? At the bottom of every building, right, which is about 10, 11 stories tall, you have a school at the bottom, and it's a preschool / daycare center so that the working people, right, can drop their kids off and take off and go to work. And you can see a picture. This is us standing in front of one of the buildings, and then the teachers that we met when we went in. It was really interesting that you can see a lot of these reforms are geared towards the family. And again, this is going back to the justification for socialism and the Bolivarian Revolution with Christian charity. The woman in the left-hand corner in the picture with me, her name's Ana Karina Roten. She actually lives in one of those houses that was given to her family by the Bolivarian Revolution back in 2008. And she whipped out a pair of keys when we arrived, and she goes, "Want to go up to my house?" Because she lives there. And I said, "Oh, so is this why you joined the United Socialist Party?" She said, "How could I not join the United Socialist Party after this? They saved my family. We were living in a rundown part of the city, and they put us on this former military base. And look, now we have free childcare." And I asked her, "So how much does your family pay?" She said, "We paid a down payment of $400. She gave it to me in dollars. And after that, it's free." So we would understand it as like, oh, an apartment, but they're homes. They call them homes there. Again, there's me and some of the representatives of the Venezuelan Federation of University Students at the recreational center there. The guy in the blue sweater, his name's Abdiel Lamas. He's actually running for a representative for all of the universities in Venezuela who support the revolution. And that's something that also affected me profoundly, was going to these rallies in favor of the revolution, seeing the youth turn out. I mean, it was overwhelmingly the youth support the Bolivarian Revolution. And it's also the people, it's the workers. As you can see in the last picture on the far right, this is on the side of a church, and you can see Jesucristo, Jesus Christ, a little explanation of when the church was built. And then below it says, "The collectives take Caracas in defense of the revolution." This is not from the military. This is from the people, the collectives, the militias that are organized, the national militia that's organized to defend the country in case of an intervention or an invasion. Lastly, we're taught here in the United States that, Venezuela's cooperating with the Russian government, the Chinese government against the United States. And that's simply not the case. When I was there, the Venezuelan people, Venezuelan government officials had nothing but good things to say about the United States in terms of us as a people, us as the working class. And even on their main highway, which they call the Paseo de la Revolución, the university, or the revolutionary highway, they have a revolutionary figure from history from each of the countries. And as you can see in the left-hand corner, there's Karl Marx there with the Soviet flag and the German flag, because he was from Germany. Then in the middle, you have the 5 countries that the first Bolivarian revolution under Simón Bolívar united, right, in the 19th century, when I was talking about Simón Bolívar. And on the far right, you have the United States revolutionary that they have, which is right, it's a few down from Marx. They had Marx, Lenin, Sandino, Rosa Luxemburg, and they have Martin Luther King. And that's who they associate with us. That's who they associate with the American working class and the fight for democracy, the fight for equality here in the United States. They don't think of Trump. They think of Martin Luther King. They think of They think of the Communist Party of the United States. They think of Eugene Debs. They know our history, right? And so I think it's important not only for us to know their history, but also know where they're going and where the Venezuelan people, despite the economic crisis that they are experiencing, where they want to go. They want a revolutionary exit out of this crisis. They want to diversify the economy. They don't want to stop at social democratic reforms under Chavismo. They want real existing socialism. And I think that we, as not just the fraternal party of the Communist Party of Venezuela, but we as communists who stand in solidarity with the Bolivarian Revolution, we should be supportive, but also critical, and help them establish the socialism that their people are demanding. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael, very much. 24 minutes, you did right on time with time. So now you have an opportunity to ask Michael any questions. By the way, if you're viewing this on Facebook Live, you can start a watch party. All you got to do is go to the event and click on start a watch party, and you can invite your friends, and that will increase the audience. So you can either raise your hand or you can type your question into the Q&A box, and we'll give you a chance to do that. Michael, we already have one question from Elise. I hope I pronounced your name right. And the question is that 9,000 number so far and 15,000 homes a goal for Caracas? Did you get that, Michael? Is that 9,000 number so far and 15,000 goal for Caracas? Or is it, I guess, more broadly distributed around the country? Michael?
Am I answering all of these at once, one by one, or am I waiting to the end to answer all of them?
Let's do it one by one because we only have one at the moment.
Okay. Yes, from what I was told, this was a continuation of Tiuna City. And the ones that have been constructed already, like I said, are called Los Chinos because they've been constructed with the help of the Chinese government. And actually the ones that are being constructed to reach 15,000 are actually going to be called, from what I understood, Los Rusos, because they're being helped they're being funded with the help from the Russian government. And because of that, because Putin is not, a leftist or, and he's anti-United States, that's why people are saying, oh, look, they're, the Russians, they're turning it, against the Bolivarian Revolution. And they're saying, oh, the Russians are, being the new imperialists. They're trying to be Trump to the punch. And maybe that's true. I remember the youth representative of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. He said, I don't trust Putin, but, he's not there to build a military base. He really is there to help Maduro, continue these reforms because Maduro gives them oil. And so, yeah, but this is just for Tiuna City located. It's like a suburb of Caracas. Yes.
Okay. We're still looking for questions. So you can type them in, or you have a couple of different places. Okay, we got a couple more. So let's see. On the book bag, Michael, the outline map of Venezuela shows the country with its claims on the part of, oh my, Guyanese territory. What is the status of Venezuela's territorial claims on Guyana, if they in fact do have such claims? Do you have any information on that?
Actually, the only information that I heard while I was there on Guyana was just that there is a conflict. It's actually my friend she's from Guyana, Loida. She goes to the university with me right now. She's a graduate student. She herself is a leftist, and she is she's in favor of, the Bolivarian Revolution. And I asked her, so what are your feelings about this? She says, well, I'm all for, Guyana being independent, but they have a supposed leftist government in Guyana right now, but they're not, they're really corrupt. They're not truly putting in socialism into practice, I guess, as they should, in her opinion. And she said, so I wonder if Venezuela could teach them a lesson or two. But in terms of what the Venezuelans told me about that, I didn't hear anything about that except for the electricity that's going out has something to do with the region of not Guyana, not the country Guyana, but the Guyana region of the country, because there's still a city in what is Venezuela called Ciudad Guyana, and that's supposedly where a lot of the electricity is generated. And so they wonder if, the Bolsonaro's people, are fooling with it, or, people in Guyana, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of, we don't really have all the answers, and I wasn't, given any because people don't know. But in terms of the territorial dispute, I really didn't hear much from them.
Okay, we'll have to hear from the Guyanese about that one of these days. Here's another question. What did you see in terms of grassroots food distribution? That's from email. Michael?
In terms of grassroots food distribution, I didn't really see much of that. Like people in the streets, getting food together, et cetera, et cetera. But I did hear from even members of the Communist Party of Venezuela. They said, in terms of food, yeah, we are having an economic crisis. I don't have as much food in the house as I have in past years, but the government ensures that we have enough food to not like die in the streets. However, I have not bought clothes for myself for the past 2 years. Does that make sense? So they're making enough money, even though the wages are low, to have enough to survive. And there's like, food rations so that you have all your healthy foods, such as fruits, vegetables, meat, rice, flour, sugar, water, milk, kind of like in Cuba with the cards that they give you. But, your beer, your arepas that you buy in the street, your cookies, you have to buy that on your own. And a lot of people don't. They don't have the money to buy that. But in terms of distribution, I didn't see too much of it. I have heard of efforts for it, but I will say that every market that I passed, every pharmacy that I went into, to buy snacks or medicine or whatever, all of them were full of medicine and food. I will say that I didn't see the shortages that they're talking about. And this is out when I'm walking by myself. So.
Okay. We have two similar questions, one from Dee and another from Elise. What do you think is the best argument and method to build support for the sovereignty, sovereign rights of Venezuela? What can we do here? And what can we do in general? And then what can socialists and communists do? How can we prepare to aid in the event of a coup, which failed a couple of weeks ago? Michael?
Yeah, I actually asked the same question to both representatives of the youth of the Socialist Party and the youth of the Communist Party. And the youth of the Socialist Party told me, understand that Maduro is the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's who we elected, and of course he's more than one person, but this is what the people wanted. It's what Chavez asked for. This is what we want. It's the direction we're heading for. And then our fraternal party, they told me, hold the government accountable. Know that, yes, this is the government we want, but we're pushing for real existing socialism. So don't necessarily excuse the mistakes that have been made, that are mistakes that are made in any system where human beings, are controlling things, but also, let people know what I'm telling you in terms of the people that I've interviewed that even don't like Maduro as a person. They still want socialism. They don't like him because he's, a bad person. They don't like him because, in their opinion, he's not a real socialist. He's not leading them all the way there on a revolutionary path. So sell that line, not even, I don't want to say sell, but, kind of preach that line of people want socialism. They want it. They're not trying to give up these reforms they have. And that's what a coup, a right-wing pro-United States coup would imply. It would mean taking all these reforms that they have that are keeping them alive and surviving. It would mean taking that away. And that's not what they want. This has to be a revolutionary exit. And it has to be determined by the Venezuelan people that live there, not the Venezuelans that live in Miami, not the Venezuelans that live in Spain, the Venezuelans that live there and vote and work.
Okay, we have another question from Baltimore, from Cindy, who says that she understands from the Center for Economic Policy and Research, they released a report in April that the economy will fail without a solution to the problem. They argue that collective punishment is being enacted on the people with the sanctions, and that unless that stops, there's going to be problems. Do you think that the neoliberal tactics alone will bring down the economy so far, and that it will cause the Maduro government to fail?
That is actually exactly what the Communist Party of Venezuela and even members in our private conversations told me that are from our fraternal party there. Like, this continuing on the path we're on isn't just okay. Actually, it's awful and it's not going to work out. And we can't continue on this path. There's no, oh, we're going to just fight imperialism and sit tight. No, they can't sit tight. They need to exit it now. In terms of the collective punishments on the people, is this, I didn't understand that question. Is this supposed to be coming from the government on the people? Like, the people are being punished, or are the people being punished as a result of the sanctions?
I think as a result of the sanctions.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely, wages are low and food is scarce as a result of the sanctions. And that is, if it's the same report I read, it's, however many thousands of people have been, hospitalized or something like this as a result of the sanctions, I would say yes, because they're not having the same quality of life that they've had since 1998. And it's been a downward spiral really since 2016. Now, with this said, I will say that every person I encountered, even on the flights coming in and out of Venezuela, they were all conscious of this, and they know it's not one person's fault. They know, United States imperialism is behind it for the most part, everyone I talk to. And so that's important noting that, imperialism is behind a lot of this, but the government needs to pull its weight, and we have to really support the other revolutionary parties that are in the Great Patriotic Pull Coalition that want to go further than just reforms.
All right, we got a question from Chris in the borough of Brooklyn here in New York City. But before I ask it, I want to encourage our friends on Facebook, if you have a question, please write it down on Facebook, and we'll ask Maicol to answer it. And also, don't forget to host a quick watch party, because we got another 15 or 20 minutes if Maicol can hold out. So Maicol, Chris wants to know, you said in Venezuela only the oil has been nationalized. Would you say more about the response and the role of the capitalist enterprises in Venezuela that have not been nationalized, big and small business? Are they supporting the revolution, or are they anti-revolution?
That's very interesting. In fact, I didn't get around to that point, but I actually met members of the ruling United Socialist Party who, they said, oh, my dad owns this business, or my mom owns this business. And I was, because these are youth, so a lot of them don't know anything different other than the Bolivarian Revolution. And because their parents and, these business owners that they're associated with sided with Chavez in the Bolivarian Revolution from the beginning, that was why they weren't, run out of the country. But it was interesting because I was just reading Gil Green, old comrade from our party's report on the Cuban Revolution. And he had reported back in the 70s that 34% of, this is in the 70s again, 34% of the farmland that he saw back then in Cuba was still privatized because they were allies of the Cuban Revolution. And that's pretty much the same excuse I heard for it in Venezuela as well. They're allies of the revolution, and it's all regulated. Even their enterprises are regulated. But I would say, then talking to our fraternal party in Venezuela, that that has to go. You can't have that much private property, especially given the current situation of the crisis, and expect a revolutionary exit out of this crisis.
Okay, I'm looking on Facebook for some questions. I don't see any yet. So while I'm looking, let's see. How is the government educating the people politically? Are they using radio, TV, social media, small house meetings, big house meetings, in church, out of church? What are they doing to, educate the people? Did you get a sense of that, Maicol?
Definitely. There was actually, I would say you see pictures of me like here in the left-hand corner. These are two of the university students. And you think, oh, politics at the university, that's obvious, right? And so they're members of, the Chavista kind of youth at the university, right? And they play a role in the university politics, like here in this picture as well. But I actually met a young man who was 11 years old, who is the elected president of the Elementary School Federation of students. And he had a dinner with us and a bunch of other, and he showed up and we all thought he was one of the government officials' kids, but he's a government official himself. And they encourage, this shows us that it encourages young people of all ages, he was 11 years old, young people of all ages to talk about these problems, to talk about democracy, to talk about the Bolivarian Revolution and its opposition. Because even though I'm taking pictures with the pro Chavista youth at the university, there's opposition. They told me about the opposition, and it gets violent sometimes at the university. They say there's fights that breaks out with the right-wing kids in the middle of class, and and they're allowed to be there. The right-wing kid, there is allowed to be an opposition, and that's what kind of infuriates me when I hear oh, there is no democracy, there is no it's an authoritarian government. If it was an authoritarian government in Venezuela, Guaido, right, the guy that leading the pro-US coup, would already be shot. He would already be imprisoned, right? And these handful of people throwing, Molotov cocktails wouldn't have been allowed to do that in the first place, right? But you have, even at the university level, everywhere, you see, the opposition. There is an opposition. It's the minority. I will say that. I hardly saw any when I was there, but you hear about the opposition, and that's because there is a very large right-wing faction there.
Interesting. Raina wants to know, Michael, have there been any communist candidates? I know you said they're in the coalition. Have they gotten elected? Are they running, or are they thinking about running in future elections?
For president, I know no. The answer no for president for the time being. Because of the coalition, everyone in that great patriotic poll coalition supports Maduro as president. And this is very common in Latin American political coalitions. They all support the same presidential candidate, but they run individual senatorial candidates, representatives, mayors. And the Communist Party has a few mayorships. Off the top of my head, it sounds like 8 sounds correct. And I believe they have 2 or 3 representatives in the General Assembly, which is kind of like a representative or a senator, and I think they may have a governor off the top of my head. But they do have, they have representation, but by no means is it a worker state where they have, the Communist Party has power.
Let me ask you a question. This might be, does the Communist Party think that socialism at this stage, given where Venezuela is possible? For example, the party in South Africa, they're supporting the concept of a developmental state where, because of the history of apartheid, big sections of the population don't have the skills that are needed in order to manage the economy. So, a cultural revolution is needed with education and training and so on and so forth. And so there's a big effort to. So I'm just wondering, in Venezuela, did you get the sense that the party thinks that they could have a revolution tomorrow and establish a socialist state, or how are they looking at that? Did you get a sense of that?
Yeah, I wasn't, and it wasn't like, oh yeah, tomorrow or even next year. But when we met with the national committee of the Communist Party of Venezuela, they told us, yeah, we think it's possible. And they give, props to the Bolivarian Revolution under the United Socialist Party, which is their ally in the coalition, for what it's achieved in the past 21 years, right? Like I said, also, and I didn't mention the women coming forth. It's not such a machista, misogynistic country as some of the other ones I've lived in and visited, right? They've made great advances socially. And even, economically, despite this revolution, like I said, they don't pay for a lot of things, but I would say that the reason why they are in coalition is similar to why our fraternal party in South Africa is in the coalition with the ANC. I understand the ANC in South Africa is in the process of, transitioning, taking the land for, the majority of the Black South Africans. And I would say it's similar in South Africa or in Venezuela. They believe that they can establish socialism soon, and it will happen, soon, but they can't do it on their own. These allies of the United Socialist Party have to come together and be on the same page with the support of the people.
Okay, we got a question from Facebook. Jim says, my understanding is that a lot of the media is private, like Fox News. What's your sense of that?
I was interviewed many times when they found out I was an American communist who spoke Spanish of, partial Latino ancestry. It was, I had interviews all day. A few of them I felt, I did not ask, my fault, but everything was going super fast. I felt were private. But it seems that the media that's private tends to be kind of like a member, not necessarily of the opposition, but it's not official. You have like Telesur and some of these other companies, these media outlets that are definitely not private, and they're not just unique to Venezuela. Like Telesur, for example, has locations in Ecuador, Uruguay, et cetera, et cetera. And so I didn't get the sense that the majority of them were private at all. No.
Okay, good to know. Another question from Lo, who asks, can you talk about what the fraternal parties are doing? Did you get a sense of parties from other countries other than, Cuba there? And what about what kind of support are they getting from China or Russia or, Cuba and so on? International solidarity.
Yeah, and so there's definitely, like I said, there's Cuban doctors supervising a lot of the hospitals. They're getting a lot of supplies from Cuba, military support again from Cuba. The extent of the Russian military support was not clear to me. Like I said, I was talking to the youth representative of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. He told me, he's worrisome of Putin's involvement in the region, but Maduro's probably just looking for anti-imperialist allies, even though Putin himself may be an imperialist in this case. But I did not hear any talk of building a Russian military base like the Trump administration's claiming. I didn't see, like I said, I didn't see any troops or anything in the streets, let alone Cuban troops, like, Trump's claiming, that's running the show there. I didn't see any of that. But in terms of what our fraternal parties are doing, this is something we actually disagreed on, at least the youth at the WFDY conference, at the General Council meeting. Many of us obviously are critical of Maduro's government, as we should be. We should be critical of everything and push them towards real existing socialism. There were others who were more concerned about Brazil and the fact that, Lula is in prison and we have a fascist regime under Bolsonaro running Brazil. And the Cuban delegation stepped forward under a delegate named Yanya. We became very close friends while I was there. And she said, if they can do this to Lula and this can happen in Brazil, it can happen here. They can put Maduro in prison, use it as a rallying cry for right-wing support, put Guaido in power. It can be a fascist state. They can do away with all these reforms. And that's where a lot of our fraternal parties were disagreeing was, oh, well, then should we just support Maduro so that it doesn't happen like Lula? Or, and that's where a lot of these groups fall into, well, do we be pragmatic? Do we be supportive of, the broader left? Do we stick to dogma? And if it's not Marxist Leninist, we don't support it at all. And that's where we kind of disagreed. And so every party had a different thing to say about that, but that would take like 5 hours for me to describe.
Here's a comment. Art comments, he says, I don't understand the PCV position. 90% of the food and many other products are imported. They can only be paid for by oil exports. Diversification of the economy is a very long and difficult process. How will nationalizing remaining capitalist sectors solve the immediate economic crisis imposed by the US blockade, which prevents a significant part of the oil exports? Do you want to comment on that, Michael?
Yeah, I understood that that wasn't an immediate kind of remedy or solution to the problem, but that was kind of a longer term solution to developing real existing socialism. Right now, it would be, let's not mismanage the oil companies, and the, the oil economy. And let's not depend 100% on oil for absolutely everything, because obviously something's going wrong. And I think, judging from what our meeting with the Politburo of our fraternal party, it sounds like they have disagreements with who Maduro's aligning himself with internationally, and some of the projects that he's doing with them internationally. So again, and that's where it comes into, do we critique the way that these houses are being built, on these military bases? Because it's the Chinese government, but they're doing it with private, corporations in China. Same with, the Russians that are helping them build the houses. What do we critique because they are helping poor people, but is that a form of imperialism? That's more like the immediate concerns. The more immediate concerns are, how do we get wages to stop being so low? How do we get people from, how do we get them to avoid further, suffering, essentially?
All right, Michael, here's a question in Spanish, which I'll read and I'll ask you to translate. Okay?
Okay.
¿Qué valoración política tienes del común de las organizaciones y colectivos sociales de Venezuela producto de tu visita al país?
From the collectives and organizations.
Yeah.
I mean, the kind of justification that I saw from a lot of them, and the how it was justified and kind of put forth, I would say that what I took away from it is that the people that are formed behind these collectives and organizations are 100% behind the Bolivarian Revolution, not necessarily behind Maduro as a person. Like I said, these kind of neighborhood collectives, the national militia, the student federations, organizations, they are in support of this. And why? I would say because, especially because these are youth we're talking about, they don't know any different. And it's not because they're stupid, it's because they grew up in a system where they have a lot of things provided for them, and they know that with the support of a US coup and a right-wing government coming to power, right, they watch the news, they see what's going on in Brazil, they don't want that for their country. And so that's how I would say that's what I took away from it.
One more question here. Are you aware of the resolution HR 1004 entitled Prohibiting Unauthorized Military Action in Venezuela? Can you suggest yes, we can suggest that. The Margaret is asking us to let everybody know that they should call their Congress people to sign on to that resolution. As resolution H1004, prohibiting unauthorized military action in Venezuela. Absolutely, we should support that.
I was just gonna say that Rick Nagin, who's the district organizer for the party in Ohio, he actually drew up some forms for the Ohio comrades to circulate here in Ohio to get Senators Sherrod Brown and Rob Portman to get on board with that. I forget the senator that put it forth, but yes, I'm aware of it. And I think it is something that we need to circulate because it's up again, prior to one, in regards to one of the questions you asked me earlier, it's up to the Venezuelan people to decide how to get out of this. Whether they go the socialism of the 21st century way or Marxism, Leninism, to get out of this crisis and develop socialism, it's up to them. And they can only do that if the United States gets their hands out of Venezuela.
Okay, I think that's an important point because it's kind of difficult to assess, at least in my opinion, the relative programs and decisions taken by the Maduro government. We can look at what the party is, the communists are saying, of course, and so on. But the main thing we ought to be doing is preventing US intervention. Let the Venezuelans decide the fate of their own revolution and stay the hell out of it, seems to me. Are there any more questions? We have 7 more minutes before we wear out Michael's voice. You can type them into the chat box. You can ask in the panelist box, or you can ask them on Facebook. Somebody wanted to know, Michael, about what you got some gifts you were bringing back in Panama that were taken from you. Is that true?
Yeah, and if you look at the picture close, I don't know if you can see it, but on like the box, there's like the tablet, and it says the Bolivarian government of Venezuela. The Panama, I had that in one of my bags. I forget which bag, if it was carry-on or whatever. They saw that and, they confiscated it. But then I talked to some of the other comrades that were coming through with me from other, Canada, Mexico, Cuba, Brazil. And a few of them got theirs confiscated as well. So, it was just Panama, right-wing, pro-Trump government trying to give us a hard time. But, it's the way it goes. I have a picture of it.
I've been pissed off. Can you just give us a brief sense of what the WFDY meeting took up?
Yeah, so the WFD General Council meeting was more, passing resolutions for the General Assembly meeting, which is going to take place in December of this year in Cyprus. And it was just basically reassessing our, stance on imperialism, which is, taking place all over the world, from Yemen to Venezuela to Cuba, and it's being led by the United States, but not only by the United States, which is one of the key points that we assessed, right? The European Union is another part of of imperialism. It's not strictly an American US phenomenon. And so, a lot of the things we debated happened, like I was saying, it had to do with Lula, the role of Lula being imprisoned and what that means for imperialism, the role of the European Union, and because our group, the United States Youth of the Communist Party, we're a member of CENA, which is, it's us in Canada and all of the European parties. So that's something we talked about is, what's our stance on the European Union? Are we soft Eurosceptics? Are we Eurosceptics, et cetera, et cetera? Brexit, we had these conversations with our fraternal comrades in Britain, and they're telling us, well, if there's going to be a Brexit, it needs to be a workers-led Brexit. It can't be, a conservative, fascist, right-wing, anti-immigrant Brexit. And so these are a lot of the conversations we had, the debates we had. But of course, as you know, since you were involved in WFD for a lot of times, the best conversations happens, not in the debate sessions, but, one-on-one in your bilateral conversations.
Okay. Well, Michael, you got a greeting from Sudan. There's a revolution taking place there. The people are on the streets overthrowing the Bashir government. So some of the comrades are up early in the morning, and they wanted to let you know that they're in solidarity with us, and we want them to know that we are in solidarity with them. And email is letting us know that the resolution is HR. It's actually HR 1004. I guess that's a House resolution. Well, he says it's not a resolution, so I'm a little bit confused about that. But we will let folks know and post it on our Facebook page so that you get a sense of it. If there are no more questions, I think we're going to thank Michael very much for his firsthand report. It was well done and incisive. I like the PowerPoint very much. I want to thank everybody for showing up this evening, and thank the folks who are looking at us on Facebook, and thank you for your questions. And thanks for sharing it. Michael, good night. And we want to invite everybody back next Sunday. We're going to have another webinar. We're preparing for the Communist Party's 31st convention. We're celebrating our 100th anniversary. And we're going to be talking about the role of the party and the battle of ideas. And that's a very, very big issue. So, look for an announcement on Facebook or in your email. It's up and coming. And we'll see you in a week. So thank you. Have a good night. And by the way, you must criticize me for that. I forgot to begin by saluting all of the mothers out there. Today is Mother's Day. And if it weren't for our mothers, we wouldn't be here. So we want to thank all of the mothers for, helping make our lives better. And with that, thank you and good night, everybody. Happy Mother's Day. Take care. And I also want to thank Carrie in Chicago, who helped us out on the tech support this evening. Thank you very much. And thank you again, Michael. Keep up the good work. Good night, y'all.